Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2023 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster diode wiring kit for Jeeps with LED taillights. Before we get into that though, let's just take a couple of minutes, check these out, and make sure they're going to work for you. So before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of refresh yourselves and touch base on the main parts that we're going to need to flat tow our Jeep down the road in the first place. And there's going to be a total of 5. First one is the base plate. That'll give us an attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. The tow bar is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your Jeep to the back of your motorhome. Third main part, you have your safety cables. And these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. You're going to keep everything paired together. Fourth main part will be tow bar wiring. And what this will do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your coach to the back of your Jeep. And last but not least, the fifth main part is a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Jeep whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, bringing you to a more safe and predictable stop. This is a really good example on how our diode wiring is going to work. So we got the left turn signal going on our motorhome, and it's transferring it back here to our Jeep's tail light. That way people know what's going on. You'll be safe and legal. You also get the right turn, your tail lights, as well as your brake lights. So you'll have all your bases covered there. Like I said though, this kit's going to be for those Jeeps that have LED tail lights, which the majority of them probably have now. But if you happen to have standard style incandescent bulbs, there's a kit available that'll work with those as well. And when it comes to picking out wiring, hands down, this is my favorite kit. All the Roadmaster diode wiring, not only for the Jeep, but for tons of different vehicles out there. And I say that because once it's installed, it's going to look completely factory. You know, you're not really going to have a whole lot of changes that are made or anything along those lines. And it's been really reliable too. We've had a lot of good luck with them over the years. And whenever you're ready to set up as well, that's really important. All you're going to have to do is plug in a connector at the front to the back of your motorhome, and that's it. And that sure beats, you know, let's say magnetic lights, for example, which you'd have to stick up on your, you know, on the side or top of your vehicle, run wires all the way up there, store them, and all that. So it's really a no-brainer to run a kit something like this. Here at the front, when you're ready to hook up, like we talked about, all you're going to have to do is plug one end to the front of the Jeep, and then the other end to the motorhome 7-way. And that's all there really is to it. I do want to mention there's a couple of kits available. So one of them is like what we have here. It comes with the wiring, the diodes, the ins and outs, all that type of stuff. And it's going to come with the 6-way round connector and the coiled cable. So you kind of get the full package. Now there's another kit available that comes with all the ins and outs, the diodes, the wiring, and all that type of all that stuff, but it doesn't come with the 6-way round connector or the cable here. And so that would be appropriate for those of you that maybe already have them components. But even then, you know, when it comes to used stuff, I usually like to just recommend to get it new. It's a pretty important, you know, piece of the puzzle here to get your lights going. But ideally, you would use that bare bones style kit if you had a tow bar that came with them. So like the Roadmaster Nighthawk, for example, that'll come with a coil or a electrical cable and the 6-way connector. So if you're using that type of tow bar that has that stuff, it doesn't make sense to get the kit that comes with it because you don't really need to buy it twice, right? So if that's your situation, that's definitely worth checking out. But other than that, at the end of the day, you know, not really a whole lot to it. It gets those lighting functions back there and keeps you safe. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad. Nothing super complicated. It is a little time consuming though, just having to route all the wires back there and everything, but something you do one time and then, you know, you have the benefit of an extremely easy hookup and disconnect from there out. So well worth it in my opinion. But if you'd like to stick around, we'll go ahead, pull into the garage and get started on it now. To begin our installation, you first want to open up the hood in your Jeep, and since everything is super tight in here, I found it's a little easier to do things this way. Take the big bundle of your wire and take one end of it, and we're going to drop it down Now there's a very small opening right here in this area. You drop that wiring down, and then you're able to go underneath the Jeep and kind of pull it over towards the front where we're going to have our connector mounted. Underneath our Jeep, this is where our wiring drops down. Now, depending on your base plate setup and your rock guard and all that stuff, you might have to think a little bit ahead here. So I routed it over loosely, and then since ours is going to be mounted out here, I wanted it to look good and have a good clean transition. So what I did was just drill a hole in our panel there. That way we could route this out and work with it like that. With our wiring where we want it, you can take the dust cover, slide that over, and then I'm going to put it through our bracket. Just kind of get our bracket out of the way for now. But you're going to take the ends here and separate them from one another. So just carefully kind of cut in between and peel it back, I don't know, a few inches or so. And then what I like to do, just in case if we nicked a wire or something when we were separating them, kind of cut, the last half inch or so off. And then we'll strip each end back to expose the bare wire underneath. And when you do that, come back and give them a good twist so they're nice and tight. If you grab our connector plug, the terminals are going to be labeled, indicating to us what wire goes where. So this one is TM for taillights, so the brown wire goes there. GD for ground, so the white wire goes into that one. And then you have LT for left turn, so the yellow wire goes there. And then RT for right turn, so the green wire plugs into that. So you just take a Phillips screwdriver and back that set screw almost all the way out. Try not to pull it out all the way because it's kind of a pain to get back in and easy to lose. But then you just take the appropriate color wire, kind of push it down in there, and tighten that set screw back up. I'll just continue to do that for the 3 remaining wires here. This is what the connector plug is going to look like once you have it all hooked up. And now would also be a great opportunity if you're hooking up a charge line to set that up now too, since that charge line will get connected into the back of the 6-way. While you're in here, perfect time to do that. And that's actually our case today, so I'll get that hooked up real quick and we'll go from there. With everything hooked up here, now you can take the dust cover and slide that over. Something I like to do at the very end, once I verify everything's working like it should, is come back and I'll put some sealer around here just to help keep everything sealed up and prevent corrosion. So then I'll come back and tape it as well. So this is somewhat temporary, but from there we can go ahead and just get our connector actually bolted up here. With our 6-way all taken care of, we can move back up here in the engine compartment where we started. So, we have our wire that ran down. The other end is going to run towards the back. But right here on the driver's side corner, this is where we're going to ground our white wire. Alright, so I've, looked at the length we need. And what you want to do is just very carefully cut just that white wire. Alright, we'll separate it from the others there. And so this is the end of the wire that's going to our 6-way. Alright, and we'll strip that insulation back, give it a twist, and we're going to crimp on a ring terminal. And this is the method we're going to use to put terminals like this on, whether it be a butt connector, a spade terminal, ring terminal, so what have you. You slide that over the bare end of the wire. crimp that down. And as far as the rest of the white wire here that's actually still attached to our whole bundle, you just want to completely remove it and hold on to it, because we will be more than likely be using it here a little bit later on. For our ground, this is where we're going to put it. So there's a factory stud with a 10mm nut. It'll work out real good. Break that free. Get the nut removed here. Once you get that nut off, you take your ring terminal, slide it over that stud, and just tighten it up back down. With our ground all secure and everything, we can continue to route our wires towards the back of our Jeep. So essentially I just dropped them straight down through there to where they come out on the bottom. So if you kind of peel back your driver's side front wheel well liner, my wire drops down and I actually have it going into a hole in the frame. And when I did that, I took maybe a foot-long piece of wire loom and just wrapped it around it. That way it'll have a little extra protection from the metal on the frame rail. But then you just kind of feed the wire, so you just push it inside of the frame. So it just runs essentially all the way towards the back. So you can see a piece of it here. Every now and again I try to use a zip tie just to help keep it secure. But you just push it all the way through, and it goes through the frame pretty easy. You don't really have too many issues there. So you can see a little piece of it there. It runs along. And then about right here in this area, on the other side of the frame, there's another hole where I pushed it out to get it out of the frame rail. Underneath our Jeep now, I did the same thing here that I did at the front. I took a foot-long piece of wire loom just to help protect it. But then that wire is just going to run up and continue along towards the back of our Jeep. And here it continues along, and I want to mention, when you're routing your wiring, do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. So especially by these suspension components, just make sure you're on top of them and you're clear, and use your zip ties to keep everything tied down. But it comes back, and right here is where it's going to drop down. And what I did was just separate the strands. That way we have 3 individual wires to work with here. So what we can do right about here with our brown wire is cut it. All right, and then on one end, we'll strip it back, twist the wire. And then if you remember that big piece of white wire that we had saved, you can strip one of those ends back as well. And then you want to twist them together nice and tight. I want to take a yellow butt connector. I've upgraded to a heat shrink style because it ends seal up. Helps against corrosion and stuff a little bit better, but the one that comes with it will work just fine. Crimp that down good. And then the other end of our brown wire here, you'll strip it back, and you want to strip it back a little long, because with this wire being a little bit thinner, what I'm going to do is twist it and then double it over, give our butt connector a little extra something to bite onto. Put that in, get it crimped. Like I said, since I'm using these heat shrinks, come back with my heat source and seal up the ends. Now we can come up top here, open up your doors, in the back, and we're going to remove our tail lights. So to do that, there's a small plastic panel and fastener that we need to remove right here. This is that panel. You can take a small screwdriver and just pry underneath of it, and that will expose a fastener that we can pull out. So I'm going to take a 10mm socket and get it removed. That's the only fastener that you need to pull out, and from there you can just pull straight back on your tail light, and we'll get it disconnected. There's this little red tab. Push back on that, and then you can push down in the center to separate it. I'll set our light off to the side and do the same thing on the passenger side to get that one removed. What I've done now is there's some electrical tape covering up our wires, and I removed that just so it's easier to work with. And I also tested to find our taillight signal. And with these Jeeps, you want to be sure to use that taillight signal. So, you know, the one that we're going to be working with here is this white wire with the gray stripe. There's another white and gray wire as well, but that one's thinner. So the one that you want to be sure to use is this one, the little bit thicker of the two. Well, with that said, you're going to cut it about in half, and strip the end back. And you can take one of the red terminals there, crimp that on. I'm going to do the same thing for this end as well. What I've done now, I'm using a pull wire. That way we can get our new wiring up into the taillight pocket. And honestly, you can probably just push it up from the bottom, but pretty easy to do it this way. You can use a coat hanger, another thick piece of wire or tubing or something. Drop it down through the taillight pocket to the bottom side. Tape your wires to it, and then you can pull these right up into position. With our yellow and brown wire, I just cut that to length and, you know, crimped on these red terminals just like we did the other ones. And now we can start to get our diode hooked up. So on one side of it, there's going to be two prongs. One of them will say car out. We want to hook that to our factory wire closest to the connector plug. The other end of the factory wire, that'll go to the prong that says car in. And then what we can do is, it says RV tail in, so that's going to be our new brown wire. And RV brake in will be the yellow wire. And then that leaves one more connection here. That's labeled ground. Alright, and so the kit is going to give you maybe like a foot long piece of white wire. And one end crimp on a red terminal. The other end crimp on the ring terminal. That's just going to slide onto there. And then I'm going to ground this right here in this area. It's a good, thick, clean piece of metal there. And just take one of the self-tapping screws that they give you and run it down. With this all hooked up, what I did was just zip tie the diode to our bundle of wire, and then I like to come back where the terminals meet our diode and just put some sealer on it. Just kind of helps keep these in place and helps keep moisture and stuff out. So with that done, we'll just plug our taillight back in and reinstall our light the opposite way that we removed it. So now we're back underneath our Jeep, and we can route the green and white wire over to the passenger side taillight pocket. So I just shot it along through here and then kind of ran it on top of the support beam here. Essentially just followed it all the way across where it eventually goes up in this area. It's kind of tricky to see. But I just did the same technique that we did on the driver's side. You know, I dropped the fish wire down and taped it to it and pulled it right up into place. Over on our passenger side, I got this one hooked up essentially the exact same way. Really, the only difference is going to be the color of the wires. So the factory taillight signal wire is going to be the thick white wire with the orange stripe. So closest to the connector plug goes in the car out. Other side of the factory wire goes to car in. Then the white wire that we ran over here, all the way over here, that'll go into RV tail. The green wire will be RV brake. And of course, the same deal with the ground. You know, I just set up that wire, plugged into the ground, and use the self-tapping screw to connect it right there. So with this all set up now, secured, siliconed up, I'll grab her tail light, plug it in, and get it reinstalled. It is a good idea to test everything to make sure it's working. So I'm hooked up at the front here to a test box. Chances are good you're not going to have one of these, so you can always use your motorhome, but keep in mind if your motorhome has any issues, it might mislead you. I'm thinking it's something on the Jeep side, but we'll turn on our tail lights, then we can hit our brake lights, then our left turn signal, and our right turn signal. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster diode wiring kit on our 2023 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.